the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Moving on to the public participation portion of the meeting. This is the 2-minute opportunity of any member of the public to address the board. I know that we kind of deviated from our usual over the last month or so, but really, if there's any member of the public that wants to address the board on any topic tonight, now would be the opportunity. That's typically when we do that, and then we will be having discussion on the items later on in this meeting. So if you came to address the board on a topic, now would be the perfect time to address the board.
My name is Amy Brito. I believe I've addressed the board previously. I am a resident in Blackberry Crossing West in the townhomes. And I know tonight on the agenda is an item regarding the Gas and Go gas station with some improvements of apartments added to that. This is actually today is the first time we heard about this as residents, and previously we had been really active in our community and asking for feedback, and we really appreciated that the board looked for that feedback from us. So I was just hoping that we would have an opportunity as residents to see the plans that I hope that the village board is seeing tonight, but also that we would have an opportunity as residents to look at that and see our thoughts on how that would really work for our community and be able to address those during the discussion as well. Is that possible?
Yes. And I should make a correction or a clarification. I did see WSPY posted a version of the plan that included apartments. The plan that we have does not have that, and we've asked that those be removed from the plan. So the plan that should be in the packet that the board will be discussing later tonight has no mention. They're not asking for approval of any apartments. We kind of agree with you there that it's probably something that wouldn't fly. And so we asked them to remove that from the plan.
Okay, is there a way that we could see the plan?
Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
Sorry, not to put you
Here
on
that
the
is.
spot, but it's right
Okay.
So we'll leave it up, and we'll get as many copies as we need. We're not voting to approve this tonight.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll hear some testimony from the petitioner. As you can see on the screen, they've made some changes. They heard your concerns, and hopefully have a presentation prepared for us tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Amy.
It's also on the village website, in the agenda packet on the village website. If you go to the agendas, the whole packet is there.
Okay,
So
we were
those-
looking at the agenda today and we did not see this. So thank you, and we
Yeah,
will look there in the
it's
future.
probably in page, 89 or something.
700. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Any other member of the public who wishes to address the board on this?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present again the concept for redevelopment of a brownfield site here in Montgomery into a community solar system for the village of Montgomery. I will explain that in more detail. I just want to let everyone know, just a little background, that last week, finally, the Future Energy Jobs Act made it through the administrative judge with the Illinois Commerce Commission. So it's now in the process of being administratively put together. And I look forward to positive outcomes for this village of Montgomery.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll let you speak during that portion of the meeting. If there's questions of you, you can speak then at that point.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item B for public participation. We have a presentation on the FBI National Academy. That'll invite our Deputy Chief.
treats.
So you know when it's a long presentation.
I'm joking about that. Thank you, Mr. President, board members. I'm sure everybody's here to hear about my presentation about the FBI Academy, and I'm surprised you're all here, so thank you. I appreciate the support. I do have a PowerPoint I'll go over, and then a slideshow at the end, which will show some of the things that I went through when I went to the academy here. It's kind of difficult to put 10 weeks into a short presentation, but I'll just go through the highlights real quick for you so you can understand what the experience was like for me. It's a 10-week course, so I was away from home for 10 weeks, which is difficult. So first and foremost, I have to thank my wife for taking care of our son and our family while I was gone. I always make sure to thank her because behind every good man is a great woman. So some of the things that I'm going to pass around so that the elected officials can see her well are, this is the Yellow Brick Road, and I'll go over what the significance of this means, but it's pretty iconic for the FBI Academy. The Chief Myers went to the Academy 10 years ago, and he has his. So I have that. I have our brochure, some challenge coins from the Academy, which are unique, coins that you give and share with other class members. And then also one thing I'll explain later is this stick brick as well. So let me hand those out while I move forward. Okay, so again, I was in the 271st session of the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I went from January 8th until March 16th. So first and foremost, and everybody asks me, and I'll say this right off the bat, I am not an FBI agent. I think everybody assumes when you go to the FBI Academy that you've become an agent. It's just a specialized training for law enforcement executives and leaders. So it's a 10-week program, and again, it's just training at the FBI headquarters in Quantico, but I'm not an FBI agent. I've just been trained at their academy. So who's invited to the academy? It's a nomination process of executive leaders from local, state, tribal, military, international law enforcement agencies. I began the nomination process in January of 2015, so it took 3 years to get called back to go. Many people wait 5, 10, 15 years to go, and sometimes people aren't afforded that opportunity to go. So I'm grateful for that. I want to thank the village board, the elected officials, the mayor for helping support me with that. That's just a map where the trip from Montgomery to Quantico, it's just a short 12.5-hour drive. If you want to do something on a weekend, it's a decent drive, but again, you're moving to the East Coast in Virginia. It's a huge facility, the Marine Corps base. It's about 86 square miles, and within there you have the Marine Corps, the Drug Enforcement Agency. All new FBI agents get their training there, and they're there for 5 months. We were there for 10 weeks, which is a long time, but 5 months would be a very, very long time to be away from home and loved ones. So on the left is the FBI Academy, and that's the headquarters where I was located at. My roommate, so it's like a dorm style, so it's like pretty much like college. So you have one dorm room, and I had a roommate, and he was from Australia. So you go from the comforts of your home to a small room where we shared everything, and then we also shared a bathroom with 2 other guys. So we had suite mates, and that took a little bit of adjustment. But great experience because I got to share a lot of ideas with him and talk with him a lot about what the culture's like in Australia and some of the issues that they deal with. So what happens is there were 222 of us in this class. We picked different classes that we were interested in and wanted to learn about. They ranged from like behavioral science, emotional intelligence, terrorism, leadership, and a lot of current issue topics that are critical for law enforcement. That's my transcript that I printed out. So the classes that I took were contemporary issues in law enforcement, fitness in law enforcement, psychology of leadership, emotional intelligence, advanced spirituality, and the seminar in media and managing the law enforcement image. The fitness portion of this academy is pretty serious. You go there like 3 to 5 times a week, and it's for 2 hours. The first part is class, and then the second part you are working out. So It was good, a little adjustment, but again, a great course. So the contemporary issues in law enforcement, it was more of a seminar where we had guest speakers come in, and they would speak to all 222 of us in an auditorium setting. So we talked from current issues like Ferguson, Missouri, an Amish school shooting, child abductions, Las Vegas massacre, and all kinds of different lessons learned from those critical incidents across the country. So a lot of great lecture, a lot of awesome speakers, so blessed to be there in that setting. Again, the fitness in law enforcement. In order to go to the academy, you have to qualify in a mile time of 10 minutes. When I first started, after I was training a little bit, I did it in 9:35. And week 9, I finished in 8:39, so almost a minute off. But you also learn about health, what to eat, what not to eat, and try to make you change your lifestyle so that you become a healthier person. So it was really good to have that re-exposure to that type of environment. Psychology of leadership. Significant psychological aspects of leadership, like what your learning style is, what the people you talk to, what their learning styles are. We had forums, assignments, online assignments. So your typical day was from 7:30 to 4:30. At 7:30, I woke up, or 7:30 the first class to 9:30, 9:30 to 11:30, 11:30 to 12:30 lunch, 12:30 to 2:30, 2:30 to 4:30. So every day. So it wasn't like you could sleep in and not do your assignments. Always have to do good in school, right? Yes, I learned that again. I was reintroduced to the time management aspect of that. Emotional intelligence, topics such as your intrapersonal, how you think, how you look at things, interpersonal, your actions with others, stress management, adaptability. Spirituality in law enforcement, and officer wellness and being satisfied in your life was a topic that's pretty current right now across law enforcement across the country. And what is it that'll motivate you and help you live a healthier, more fulfilling lifestyle so that you enjoy your job more and can help the community because you're happier in your own personal life. I did a seminar in media, managing the law enforcement image. As you know, social media is a huge component of our community nowadays. You'll see when I took my photos, I'm pretty animated when I take the pictures because my parents are on Facebook, and my dad's always telling me, smile more, be happy. So I did that to try to, enjoy the moment, be able to look back on it. But in the media class, we talked about social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The narratives that come out with the media aren't always accurate. So it's good to have a plan on how you address the media and the messages that you want to send. But again, in these types of classes, we had people from across the country who've dealt with pretty serious issues and know how to deal with the media, so it was good to bring those ideas back here. We had 18 international students in my class from all around the country. They had an international forum where they spoke and talked about their country, their makeup, the types of laws they have, the types of crimes they have. So it was refreshing to hear from them what they deal with, and it wasn't all just terrorism, a lot of crimes against people, burglaries and stuff like that, and good again to network and hear how they handle and can combat some of those issues. The Yellow Brick Road you'll hear about, again, that Yellow Brick is a 6.1 mile course at the Marine base, and it's their endurance course. So it's like running up hills, climbing up rope, climbing over nets, up and down. So it's a pretty intense course, and you do it all at one time. It took me almost 2 hours to complete it, but that's why you train and you do the 10 weeks so at the end you're able to complete this course, which has kind of been the rite of passage for the FBI Academy. So when they refer to the Yellow Brick Road, that's what they're talking about. And there it is. That's me on the right, trying to get some air halfway through the course because it's pretty intense. So you think you're in shape, but definitely not as much as you'd like. Just some photos from the Academy. Again, the FBI Director, Chris Ray, spoke at the Academy. That's me shaking hands with him there. That's my class section. We had 5 sections, so 222 people divided into 5 groups. That's my photo for the graduation, and that's Chief Dan Myers 10 years ago. So if you can't recognize him right there, looks just as young and spry as ever, minus the mustache. I had to throw that in there. And again, for me, the reason why I do everything is for my family and to make a better life for them. So with that, I have a little video presentation I'll talk a little bit about. Again, that's the bulk of the coursework. You wouldn't want to see pictures of me in class for 10 weeks. I wouldn't want to see pictures of me in class for 10 weeks. So some of the enrichment tours that we took and historical places we visited, those will come up and I'll kind of narrate through a little bit. President Trump spoke at the session before mine. That's the podium he spoke from, so I thought I'd get a picture from there. That's my roommate from Australia. That's their uniform, which I thought looked like a flight attendant's. The White House. Again, with a lot of these tours, we were granted special access, and we had people talking about the monuments and the history and the enrichment that it has and why it's relevant to law enforcement. That's at the FBI headquarters. It's a hidden camera. The Marine Corps Museum. Very humbling experience to go and talk to veterans and hear what they've done for us to build the freedoms we have. Gettysburg, another amazing experience. Highly recommend if you go to DC to check out those things, because they're really well worth it. During our classes, we gave presentations as well. That gentleman in the picture is from Alaska. So the good thing is we network with people from all around the country, and you can share ideas and get ideas from them. In law enforcement, we need to do a better job of sharing what we do well. And if you think of it like this, any profession, any group of people, if you put 222 principals together for 10 weeks, they would network and gain a lot of that experience. So having law enforcement executives around the country and around the world, it was great. So here's some of our international students. That was from Morocco. He's from Estonia by Russia, Ukraine, Denmark, Canada. And again, they all spoke very great English, so we were able to exchange ideas and to talk. New York, we went to New York, which is the highlight of usually the trip. Got to see the NYPD. That's their communications center, real time, which is bigger than this room with all monitors and trying to keep track of all the activity in the city. That's their sea and air rescue units there. So I'm kind of just giving you a highlight of the things we went through, the Statue of Liberty. My wife would say it was just a vacation, but it wasn't. I had a lot of homework. And again, I'm not showing you pictures of the downtime. This is when we were able to actually get out and do some things. And again, with a lot of great people there. There's the 9/11 memorial. Very humbling when you're in there and you realize the devastation that we went through. We also visited Philadelphia, which was a really enriching experience. That was me at the bomb disposal unit, wondering why I'm there. We went to Geno's, Philly Steaks, the City of Brotherly Love. So again, a lot of these pictures I took and tried to be animated so that when my parents saw them, they could get a little bit of the feeling of what it was like to be there. That was at the Philadelphia Art Museum where Rocky was filmed and ran up the steps, the Liberty Bell. So again, we saw a lot of historical, really cool things. That was at the Comcast building downtown. That's me getting sworn in as president. It's not real. Oh, and we did get to my son's highlight. We got on the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium. They won the Super Bowl last year, so the guy from Philadelphia got us there. That's at the Pentagon, their memorial. It's beautiful. They did a great job with that. And again, we had people walk us around, explain how big that building is. Just so you know, there's 25,000 employees in there. So they have their own mall, and they have their own Black Friday. So it's kind of cool to get to see all those things. It's the Holocaust Museum. That's so at Quantico, it's like a really big hamster tube. In all these rooms, you can't open any windows. So when one person gets sick almost everybody got sick. So in week 5 or 6, I got bronchitis and sinus infection, and half the class was wiped out. So we had the yellow brick, and I said, well, we need to make up a sick brick because most people were sick. So that's what I did, is I made up that styrofoam sick brick to pass out for us, and it was pretty bad. Some people were like out for weeks. So, but again, the physical fitness component of the class, no choice to it, but you had to work out, which was great. You kind of take for granted those things when you're able to do them. But now that I'm back, I miss some of those people. The networking and the relationships were amazing, and I've got some great friends that I can call upon. And as the chief will tell you, years later, you can still call on people from New York, Florida. I can call Australia and say, hey, what are you guys seeing? What's the trend with this? Or what are you doing to combat that? And that stuff's invaluable. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. And again, just kind of showing you the highlights. This was the graduation. And once again, Chief Dan Myers. A lot of the acquaintances I made, again, I keep in touch with. So, and finally, in the end, the reason we do everything is for our family and those that we love. So don't ever forget that, because life is short and you need to enjoy it. So that's me, the Academy SEAL, and that's my son. So, you know, push him to be better than I am, just like we all try to be better for our families. So that's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Armando. I appreciate that. I know that's something that's been very important for the village going back decades, is ensuring that our employees not only well trained but also well versed, across the country and the world. So, a great opportunity for you and for the village. So, thank you for sharing that with us today. With that, I'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll read the items, entertain a motion for approval. We have minutes of the village board meeting of March of 2018, March 26th. The building report for March of 2018. Accounts payable through April 5th. Cancellation of the April 17th committee of the whole meeting. Appointment by the village president of Jay Bragg to the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners. That's reappointment. And then the final one, which is the request from the VFW to conduct their annual Buddy Poppy Days on Friday, May 18th and Saturday, May 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Youngerman. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, moving on. Items for separate action. We have recommendation of Planning Commission of PC 2018-004, special use request for a PUD for the SR Jacobson apartment complex. And then we'll discuss along with that the ordinance 1807, which is approval of the final plan of special use for the PUD for that same use. And that's the first reading. We won't vote on that this evening, but we'll discuss both at the same time. So with that, Director Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is, like you said, the first two items, A and B, on your agenda for separate action. Montgomery Place Apartments, S.R. Jacobson and Edward R. Rose and Sons, final plat and PUD special use approval. You'll recall that this is a project that has 468 apartment units to be developed in the Ogden Hill area. The plan includes a 3-year build-out. The companies intend to start earthwork later this spring, completing underground improvements towards summer, and then start construction of the first buildings. There will be 13 different buildings over the course of the next 3 years that will be constructed on this property. The staff and the Plan Commission both recommend approval of the special use, as well as obviously acceptance of their recommendation to approve the overall development, with the condition that some additional landscape items and final engineering plans are adjusted based on staff's comments and EI comments at this time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience from the developer, but as you mentioned, this is first reading of the ordinance, and proposed action in 2 weeks.
All right. Questions?
I know I brought this up before. Does the petitioner have any problem including our crime-free housing addendum into the rental contracts?
We've gone through that with the village attorney. I'd like to ask Laura to comment on that.
Yeah, so we reviewed the contract. They have a standard contract that they use for most of their properties, and we reviewed it to see how it compared to the language we wanted. It does include most of the concerns we would have added, and for those things it doesn't, we had proposed that we have a separate handout that they can also give to the tenant. So instead of adjusting their lease agreement, they just also have a Montgomery-specific handout that would address the remaining items, and they were amenable to that.
Is the police department amenable to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? I know we've talked about it a few times before. All right, you have 2 weeks between now and the second reading, final approval. Is there any opposition to putting this on consent? 2 weeks? Again, we can pull it if you have questions at that time, but we'll proceed that way. All right.
Do you need a motion to accept the
Yes, we do.
Plan Commission's
I got to
recommendation?
get to my agenda again. So item A, recommendation on Plan Commission of PC 2018-004.
Yeah?
Second.
Okay. Is that a second? Oh, you made the motion, you
I
second?
seconded.
All right, call the roll.
Teresa? Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz? Trustee Youngerman? Trustee Marisak? And Trustee Bond?
All right, that's 6-0. Thank you. Item B is the ordinance. That'll be on consent in 2 weeks. Thank you, Rich. All right, item C, we have a recommendation of Plan Commission of PC 2018-005Z, a text amendment to section 8.08 of the zoning ordinance regarding density, and this is on behalf of the Victorian Apartments. Again, I'll turn it over to Director Young for a summary.
Thank you. Again, this is Victorian Apartments have requested that the village consider a text amendment to the R6 multifamily zoning district. Currently, the zoning district regulations call for a maximum of 12 units per acre for any type of multifamily development. The exception to that would be any PUDs or annexation agreements that have dictated higher dwelling units per acre on a site-by-site basis. But straight zoning requires a maximum of 12 units per acre. Victorian Apartments is currently a legal non-conforming use because it was built prior to the time of our existing ordinance going into place for the 12 units to acre. So if you're familiar with their site, they're at a density of just over 16 units per acre. They have 157 units on 9.76 acres at that site currently. What they would like to do is see the village board amend the zoning ordinance to allow the R6 zoning district to include up to 20 or possibly 23 units per acre. We've put in your packet a comparison of other surrounding municipalities' zoning ordinances and how they relate to dwelling units per acre, and really, frankly, did not find any other community within our region other than Naperville that has apartments at that type of density. I believe that in Naperville, that would be the type of project that you would see around the Route 59 train station and those types of areas. So we felt that based on what we saw within the region and the fact that we know that we're going through a remodeling of our zoning ordinance right now. As you recall, CMAP granted us a CMAP grant to help us to reform our zoning ordinance and our subdivision regs into a unified development code. And we're in the process of just kicking that off. This is going to be about a year's process of rewriting our ordinance and subregs. So given those two facts, we felt that at this time, staff would recommend not going with the proposed text amendment, and the Plan Commission concurred with that recommendation last week at the Plan Commission meeting. So we frankly feel that it's best at this point in time to study the zoning that is of standard now for apartment developments around the region, frankly, and beyond, and look at that in terms of whether or not there should be an adjustment later, if at all, in our density calculation. So our recommendation and that of the Plan Commission was to not approve the request requested text amendment. And again, I'm not sure anybody from the applicant is here tonight. I don't see anybody, but that's why there is no ordinance at this time for you to consider as a first reading.
Okay. Any questions for staff? So Plan Commission unanimously concurred and recommended denial of the text amendment at this time. If you have any questions, or we can, I would also entertain a motion.
I have a question. Would the petitioner,
I'm sorry, there is a representative from the petitioner here, if you'd
Yeah,
like to.
if you'd like to address the board, you certainly can.
Send them down.
Yeah, absolutely.
my question is, would the petitioner be interested in including our crime-free housing addendum into their rental contracts? And the reason I ask this is because I know firsthand that our police department spends an inordinate amount of time over at Victorian, at this apartment complex. So there seem to be some issues, and I think I'm saying that nicely, Chief?
Oh, under the gentleman here, it's improved immensely since the summer, but
I agree, and I understand that you're the new owner, but I'm going by the history of this property as I've known it the last 11 years.
If I could just maybe make another additional comment that I'm sorry I didn't say earlier, but there is new ownership at Victorian Apartments over the last 9 months, and they've done a tremendous job to clean up the site, to do a better job with maintenance. I think they're doing a better job of screening potential renters, which I believe that the chief would back me up on that. So it's a much improved situation out there, and that really doesn't fall into place in terms of our recommendation on the density, but I think that that's important for the board to know that the site is much improved, and the overall situation is better, and I think the chief was just going to reiterate some of that as well. So
that is correct. Actually, the deputy chief and I just met with one of the persons who enforces some of the parking rules and regulations out there just last week, and we're making great progress.
And I hear what you both have just said, but my question is, are they currently using the crime-free housing agreement that we have in place, in addition to their rental contracts?
I cannot answer that question.
I can answer it real quick. No, they're not, but they also have a pretty strong lease agreement there, even prior to our agreement being adopted and, well, not technically adopted, but it's a voluntary thing. They had in their lease a 3-strike rule, so when the police were at their unit on the 3rd time, they were evicted.
And so you've seen a significant downtick in the amount of calls to that location?
Well, the overall amount of calls are similar, but the serious amount of calls are way down, considerably way down.
Is this the first time you've been to show us this? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
It's the first time. Hi, I'm not the owner. I'm
Manager?
I'm the developer. I'm civil engineer. I've met Rich. I am close to the ownership, so I can tell you, Steve, that the ownership is a fairly young ownership. It's not even 1 year, and I think that the chief of police and the fire department and the village can tell you and be a witness that tremendous improvement was made. We have brought the building up to code, fire department-wise, and then Lieutenant Dan has been, we had numerous meetings on site with different representatives trying to accommodate for the needs. We're studying the code and the requirement as well, and we're willing to cooperate. I can tell you that the ownership has made a point not to accept any revenues from this property but bring everything back into the property and take pride ownership with it. We're looking at 9.8 acres of land with 157 units. A lot of open area. We are 100% occupied, and the ownership are turning away every day new applicants. There is a high demand. The rent, rates goes from $750 for the studios to $1,200 for the two-bedroom. There is a high demand. The idea was we proposed 3 different options. One of them was 2 of the 3 were to keep the same footprint, not to extend it to new area, but on the 2-story building, add a 3rd story. There are 3-story buildings in the property, so keep the same height level appearance-wise. Another option was there is a common building or an office that is really not as much in use, as well as a public swimming pool that we don't find necessary, just a hazard. We thought of maybe using those 2 into one 12 units building. It's basically a supply and demand. The ownership pays close to $160,000 a year in property tax. And again, they're new to the village. They're not new owners of buildings. They have been owning properties in the areas. They're professional. They take pride in their buildings. And we wanted to explore the opportunity to expand on the existing. Again, 9.8 acres, and we feel that there's we have excess of 240 parking spots. And we had previous meetings with Rich. We appreciate the discussion and the willingness. Regardless if the petition be approved or not, I know talking on behalf of the ownership, they're looking for a long-term relationship with the village, fruitful relationship. Steve, we would try and show you, a year from now, 2 years from now, that, we meant good, and the crime rate will go down. There is a 24/7 on-site management. They're not in the office, but they reside in the property. We don't allow any gathering, any some parties outside or any alcohol or any. So they're very particular about the safety of the well-being in the property. Yeah. And thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions for the petitioner? And I think more so on this, it's the overall density, not so much you as the user. I think I share the concerns that he was making about the property itself. But it's, when we heard there was new ownership, the chief wanted to meet, and I think that relationship, building that relationship is going to be helpful. But as it relates to zoning, I think now is a really good opportunity for us to revisit this as we rewrite our ordinance or combine our ordinances. I think, without giving my opinion on densities, globally, I think it's something that we should at least look at.
Sure. If I may, with my little study, I think there are, and Rich, you can correct me, there are only 6 properties or 6 areas in the whole village of Montgomery that falls within category Zone 6, which is more restricted than others. Maybe a change of zoning will be appropriate, or we're open. We'll accept your suggestion as they are.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and please send your the positive comments to the owner. We appreciate what you guys are doing on the site, and we'll probably definitely incorporate at least looking into this with our unified development code that we're working on. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Mr. President, if you could have a motion to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
1 second. And a vote of yes is to deny this, just like Plan Commission, correct?
Correct. We're just
It's to accept,
You're
yeah,
accepting,
correct.
you're
Either way.
accepting the recommendation to deny.
So,
So
okay.
we're just accepting that they denied it.
Okay, so a yes is that you accepted it.
Correct.
Okay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Heinz.
That carries 5-1. Thank you. Move on to item D, which is recommendation of Plan Commission of PC 2018-006. Request to rezone 1460 Southeast River Road from R3 Traditional Neighborhood Residential District to B2 General Retail Business District. And this is the Fitzpatrick Group. Director Young.
Thank you. As you just mentioned, it's the Fitzpatrick Group that has brought forward this application for rezoning of the property at 1460 Southeast River Drive, or River Road, excuse me. Because the property was formerly the Village Police Department and then later became the Police Department building for the Fox Valley Park District, the site was zoned R3, which was appropriate for institutional type uses that occupied the building. But now that the property has transferred to the Fitzpatrick Group and they would like to utilize the property for commercial purposes, in all likelihood, office or some type of office-related uses, it's more appropriate to have the site zoned B2. We would point out that the corridor starting at Montgomery Road, Mill Street, and Route 25 has seen redevelopment, thus being the Riverview Restaurant, and so it's not out of character with the overall area. And the staff recommended approval of the rezoning request. The PC, or the Plan Commission, by a vote of 3-2, also recommends approval of the rezoning request. So you have acceptance of the Plan Commission recommendation and then first reading of the ordinance for rezoning tonight as item E.
All right, thank you. Is the petitioner here would like to address the board on the topic? You certainly can, or you can answer questions that come up.
Yeah, I just wanted, my name is Bart Grometer. I'm with the Fitzpatrick Development and just wanted to offer myself to answer any questions on this kind of repurposing of the old police station that was originally zoned as residential, unbeknownst to us. And so the ask is that it be rezoned in a more purposeful way to get it rehabilitated.
Awesome. Any questions for the petitioner?
No, this was the old police station, and all you really want is for general business. You don't have anybody right now, but you can't put anything in there because it's resident. So you just want to change it to retail, and then you're going to figure out if it's going to be a knitting shop or a accountant or something like that.
Most likely, you think of an office or medical office for that. Okay. Mm-hmm. But as it stands now, it's residential, can't do anything with it, and nobody wants to live in an old police station.
No. Good point.
This area is underserved. If it goes to some sort of medical office building, I think this area is underserved with that type of use.
Yeah, one question that I would have, and it kind of relates more to staff on this, is as it is an existing building, and if we do follow through and rezone this, let's assume there's limited redevelopment of the site. What kind of buffering would be required of that, or what kind of buffering might exist that would be, mainly I'm just thinking of what the potential impact could be to the 4 or 5 residential properties that abut this.
Well, one of the things that we'd work with either the applicant as a new owner, let's say, of the property, or the existing owner for any type of use would be landscaping to meet up with our current landscape code for any new development on the property, or redevelopment, I should say, of the property. There are some uses that would be permitted as of right, so that would be a matter of working with them at the building permit time or remodeling permit time. Others would require a special use and would come back before the Plan Commission and obviously then to the village board for final action. So we'd have that tool at that time to look at how we could buffer or help to add some buffering. There is some existing buffering now. It does not meet code for any new development, let's say, but redevelopment, we feel confident we'll be able to work with the owner on that.
I get you. So they wouldn't be grandfathered on any buffering that they might be missing now?
No.
Cool. Okay.
Have we heard any concerns from adjacent property owners?
There were a few folks that came to the Plan Commission last week. Unfortunately, I was out of town and I was not at the Plan Commission meeting, but there were a few folks that had concerns. I guess one down stream, so to speak, to the south on Route 25 was a little bit concerned about drainage, if there was some additional parking added. Frankly, right now, there's significant amount of parking area, could be restriped to be utilized with whatever type of use. It's a little bit hard to guess at this point in time what the parking demand would require based on a use that's unknown. So we'd have to compare that to our code and see what parking requirements would be in play, which again probably would involve a special use review depending on the use. So that individual further south on 25, as I understand it, was concerned about increased impervious surface and what that might mean in terms of a drainage concern for her downstream. Obviously, any redevelopment of the property that included coverage with a parking lot then would be looking at stormwater management and meeting our code for detention and then release rate. So I'm pretty confident that we'd be able to accommodate that.
Okay.
One of my concerns, and I'm sure you've addressed it, once we've created that as a retail property, there are certain types of retail that would not be appropriate for that area at all. I know you've got a category here for retail. What kinds of retail operations would fit under B2?
Well, most of your, let's say, standard, for lack of a better term, strip center type uses would be allowable. If you get into a drive-through restaurant situation, that's a special use. Certain types of medical uses would be a special use. If it was to be converted more to an office, that would be allowed in the B2 as a special use. We can do a more in-depth report to you before any potential action in 2 weeks of what would be permitted and special use as allowed in the zoning ordinance to give you a better handle on that.
So I think a lot of the things you might be concerned about would be fall under a special use, so you would have to grant that.
I mean, frankly, that's the whole purpose of having the special use process is to, when you have commercial or office abutting residential, that's why there are special uses in place, because you have to evaluate whether or not that is appropriate, whether or not there's enough buffering, whether or not there's a balance in the land use that's acceptable to the general public.
And it's not a practical idea to offer a special use for it the way it's zoned now, but we need to
But they're not
change that.
requesting any special use at this time.
In
The
other words,
village staff initiated the rezoning based on their concerns of what they acquired, frankly, so.
In other words, a massage parlor, tattoo parlor, anything like that, you'd have to go special use, and we wouldn't have to worry about something like that then. This is strictly like an office.
Yeah,
I think,
right. Not to cut you off, but like a tattoo parlor, adult entertainment, all of that has a big X, and it's not even up for debate as a special use. There are other classifications that are special use, certain forms of medical offices, certain forms of if someone were to have a veterinary clinic with an animal boarding, that would have to have a special use. So this whole process would have to go through again and get vetted out to make sure that it was an appropriate use. But for tonight's purposes, the idea is just to get it away from that residential so that it can be marketed appropriately.
And as a developer, I'm guessing you're fairly cognizant of the fact that you're in the middle of a residential neighborhood and you don't really want to upset the neighbors.
No, I did receive, to answer your question, one inquiry from an adjacent property owner. It was more out of curiosity of what did we have planned for it, which very understandably she wanted to know, hey, what's going to go there? And when I went through some of the lists that absolutely cannot go there, that satisfied her concerns, because really it was probably what we would all say is the tattoo parlors, the currency exchanges, those adult entertainment type of things, anything like that, simply just can't go there. It can't even be proposed. And so that satisfied her concern.
And as part of the rezoning, the adjacent property owners were all notified of this,
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And I think this is really a step towards promoting. We all want the best available use on this redevelopment. It'll be back on the tax rolls again for the first time in a very long time. And so I think this is a step in helping you get the best user that you can that works for all of us. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
To recommend planning commission's recommendation?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz? And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries 6-0. Thank you. And then item E is the ordinance, 1808, granting a rezoning of that property. This is first reading, so we'll vote on this at a future meeting or at the next available meeting.
Can that be put on consent?
Any objection? Okay. Move on to item F. We have a recommendation of the Plan Commission of PC 2018-007. This is annexation of 1625 and 1696 Jericho Road for Aurora University. It's followed up with the ordinance 1809 that does the same thing. And then two more items essentially related to the same topic. So with that, we'll discuss all of those at the same time. Does that sound appropriate? And with that, I'll turn over to Director Young for a summary.
Thank you. As you well know, Aurora University has started the first, well, completed, frankly, the first phase of their athletic complex on Jericho Road, south of Jericho Road, totaling about 45 acres. They have several more phases to complete on the property, adding a number of different facilities that have been talked about previously with the village board. These are two small parcels, or actually 3 lots, but 2 addresses that total 1.35 acres directly abutting Jericho Road. So they would be annexed and zoned into the village and incorporated into the overall PUD in terms of land area for Aurora University and their athletic complex. So at this time, the Plan Commission, staff and the Plan Commission are recommending approval of the annexation and zoning to R1, which essentially is a holding zone until they can be incorporated into the overall PUD as part of the plan. So their next phase for AU, as I understand it, really does not include these parcels, but it's just quite a large acquisition, and then these two are added to it to take it over 45 acres overall. So again, this is a recommendation from the Plan Commission for approval of the annexation and the zoning, and then ordinance in 2 weeks to do both.
And then the PUD, which is the next, items down, that's actually attaching this into that PUD?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I know that the petitioner is here. If you want to address the board.
Jeff, can you possibly put that up there where the,
Yeah, it wasn't coming up well.
there it is, thank you. That's fine.
Did you find the other slides? Yes. Thanks.
So real quick, while this one's up there, it's the 3 lots that are outlined in dark blue on the south side of Jericho. Obviously, the bulk of the development that's taken place is further to the southwest, along what essentially is an extension of Edgelon Drive. I'm sure you're familiar with the overall complex. This is tucked up into the north central portion of the overall acquisition of properties.
Having an error with the software.
Yeah.
So use your best imagination, Bruce.
Okay, thanks. I'm Bruce Goldsmith. I represent the university. Camarilla Moran, who's vice president, is here also. So if you can envision, we have this grand entrance off of
I've got your
Jericho.
pictures, I think. I don't know which one.
All right, so the last time we were before you was at the start of the project. Now we've got the project going, and I assume that I may be able to scroll through this. Yes, so the main improvement is athletic fields for lacrosse, soccer, and We actually had football there in the fall. We have women's softball in this location, which is at the northwest corner of the site. And we have...
That's phase 2 that hasn't been built yet.
We actually have some more pictures. So this is the overall site looking east. So we've built several parking lots, and we have a large detention area to the south, and beyond that, in a grassy area is actually for compensatory storage. We have very little frontage on Jericho, so when these houses became available, we've bought the 2 houses and a vacant lot for future positioning. Phase 2 of the project would really contemplate, so let's see if I can do this. So in this area here, we're contemplating a track field. We have room in the back. Originally, this was actually an area designated for a dome. We've since moved that possibility back, and with that, we actually developed developmental storage for the site as if a dome were there. So we actually have excess storage in this detention pond for phase 1. We have actually about 3 acre-feet beyond what the requirements were for to meet the village ordinance. As we acquire sufficient funds, it's a major project. This is a major development project just from the standpoint of moving soil. We have to do a lot so that we eventually would have more detention on the back of the site, and we would free up about 2/3 of the site for development, which could be done in phases, because each one of the things that we want to do, track is not the first thing. What we would like to do is put men's baseball back in here. It requires a lot of earth moving and land balancing, a little more parking, and then over time we would fill out the site with other sports-related uses. And then we might have some other uses toward the front of the site along Jericho Road, which is might be phase 3. So tonight we're here just for the 3 lots that we're bringing in to add to the overall PUD, with no intention to improve those at this time. In fact, we'll demolish the houses. One house we already have control over. The other one is occupied on a lease back, will be vacated within the next 6 months. And then we will clear that part of the site. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Surely.
Any questions from the board? I know that there were some residents that were at the Planning Commission meeting that expressed some concerns with drainage in the area. Is there, anything additional that you want to update the board on?
I can tell you, yeah, actually I have a slide for that too. So this is the condition after the big rain last fall. And the first large area of water is our detention pond. The second area is our compensatory storage issue. The pond did not overtop because it had much more capacity than what was generated by that rainfall, but it did its job. And in general, our site, in many respects, is designed to drain to the south, not to the west. There's actually a small ridge line between the 2 properties, so it goes up a little bit towards the western edge, then goes back down on their side. Unfortunately, there is water coming from all directions, north and I suspect west, coming into the site, their site, that is the single-family residences. There was some testimony that there's and I think I have a picture of this too, you can get to so there's a ditch that the residents testified, which is farther to the west, which they claim was partially filled, and that's whether it's been filled or not, we don't know, but it is a drainage point. The other thing we've observed from the beginning when we got the site, and it's no secret to the village and to the county, there's some control caused by the the Burlington Northern has 2 culverts going under the tracks. Our people have observed some deterioration of the culverts on the north side. Looks like there's better structures on the south side. That's a chokehold, and that adds to the problems in the area by causing water to pond up. We put in brand-new field tile for the bottom 2/3 of our site. We can't even look at it. It's all underwater. There's just too much water out there right now. And we think a lot of it has to do with that chokehold, but also they observed 6 beaver dams out there. So we've got a lot of different natural and unnatural reasons that things aren't working well.
Can we go back to that one picture? Show the tracks, please. So if I have my bearings correctly, as we come down to this, the very south here, where that drainage ditch is, you're saying that there's a culvert there or culverts that go under the tracks?
Yeah, the Burlington Northern has a couple of culverts down there, and they don't seem to be working very well, but I think also there's a capacity issue. But I'm not an engineer. I wouldn't suggest that I have answers to those questions, but I do know from talking to engineers who've looked at this for the last several years that it is controlling the flow, and therefore there tends to be backups.
Where do these culverts daylight? Do they go straight south, or are they?
They do go
is it
straight south, is my
to the left
understanding.
there a little bit, where I see what looks to be a little black hole? So I'm assuming when Sugar Dome was installed and the new tracks were installed for Sugar Dome, because that's what those tracks are, correct? That water then goes on to Sugar Dome property?
I don't know for sure. Engineer Wallers?
Can you, Jeff, can you put up slide 1?
Well, I misunderstood too, Steve, that that ditch is, because A&A is in Montgomery, the ditch behind it that they filled in, because I thought we could do something about that, we can't. That's county, and that florist shop is county. So we have nothing to say about that either. It goes back to county. I thought that would be a nice thing to open back up, but we have to talk to county on that.
So if I can address Trustee Youngerman's question first. So the culverts come across right about here, and they cross the tracks, but then they go to the east and then to the south. There's a drainage channel that follows this way, and that's where those beaver dams are in, is that channel. The county has requested the property owner to clear those dams, and we haven't had direct feedback from them, or they haven't gotten a response. So that's
none of that on that elbow area where none of that is new drainage, new culverts?
No, that's
nothing like that. That's all old existing.
Right.
Okay.
Eventually, all of that will be replaced when the entire, for lack of a better term, the Sugar Dome property develops. The intent then is to actually bring the drainage through where the natural floodplain is, and then there's going to be additional stormwater and floodplain storage in here to convey that water through there appropriately. So that's the long-term plan, but in the short term, this needs to be cleaned, and so that's a property owner responsibility.
And that property owner is currently county, correct?
Well, the property owner would be the owner of the remainder of the Sugar Dome property. There's an ownership group that owns it. I don't know who it is, but they have been contacted by the county, as we understand it.
Okay. Thank you.
Keep in mind that the Nexio development and the United Crystal property, the Sugar Dome property, is west of the blue area that Pete just outlined. So their detention facilities are off-site of the floodplain that's identified in the light blue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The light blue and adjacent to, okay.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, frankly, is the balance of what we call the Montgomery Business Park.
Okay.
That the Sugar Dome and Nexio acquired approximately 30 acres of about a 125-acre parcel. And part of that 125-acre parcel includes that blue floodplain area.
And this is why these areas are in a TIF, or one of the main reasons that these areas are in a TIF in the Village of Montgomery. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Goldsmith? I appreciate it.
Thank you for your
yeah,
time.
Thank you.
Would you like a motion on F, recommendation of Planning Commission, annexation, 1625 and 1696?
I would like a motion. Is that one?
So moved?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee? Trustee Heinz? And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries 6-0. The next item is Ordinance 1809, which is annexing these 3 parcels. This is first reading. We'll vote at the next meeting. We'll add that to consent unless there's objection. And then we'll move on to item H, which is recommendation of Planning Commission of the special use request for PUD, which includes these parcels at AU. As we discussed, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Heinz? And Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Thank you. And then we have Ordinance 1810, which is amending the PUD for AU. This is first reading. That'll be on consent in 2 weeks as well. With that, I'll move on to item J, which is Ordinance 1811, establishing a comprehensive fee and deposit schedule for building and development. This is first reading. And with that, I'll ask Director Young for his presentation and summary.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a combination of fees that we've had, frankly, in multiple locations within our municipal code, subregs, zoning ordinance, and then fee policy. So we're trying to combine them all into one location. And then we've taken with the Finance Department a comprehensive look at what those fees are. Currently, I earlier this afternoon sent you an email that included a handout that's at your station tonight. At the request of Trustee Marisak, we put this together this afternoon, so I apologize for not getting this out to you sooner. But again, you're not asked to vote on this tonight, so you'll have time to contemplate it and then hopefully vote on it in 2 weeks. The bottom line is that you see in this attachment that the current ordinances, or fees, I should say, in terms of ordinance compliance for a multitude of different types of building projects that a resident might take on, as well as a commercial venture. And then we have a table on the second page that identifies things like cell towers, demolition, driveways, electrical upgrades, and the like. That could be obviously incorporated in either residential or commercial and industrial projects. And it goes on to later show miscellaneous, building fees for shell permits only, certificates of occupancy, plan reviews, reinspection fees, and the like. It's a comprehensive look at all of the different types of development fees or review fees that we commonly handle within the Community Development Department. The last page indicates primarily planning-related fees for items coming before the Plan Commission, and then administrative review and zoning appeal review. So you see what is currently in place and then what is proposed. We've taken a look at neighboring communities and how they deal with these individual type of fees, and contemplated what we feel is appropriate at this time to include in our overall fee policy and ordinances. So with the help of the Finance Department, we put this together and feel that it's a good step forward on how we administer these fees, and would ask for your approval.
So when I'm looking at the residential section, table 112T1, we currently don't charge anything for a deck? I want to just make sure I'm reading it.
That's
so there's no fee associated with
when it's blank. It's the current fee is the same as the proposed fee. I apologize. That's
Okay.
not clear. So yes, when it's blank, we do charge for a deck, but it's $55, and we're not requesting that that be changed.
Thank you. I was looking at this and thinking, we were really starting to nickel and dime everybody. So, thank you.
So that would be the case with finishing basement as well, the current fee?
Yeah,
is the
all of
same?
these blanks indicate that there's no change proposed, that the proposed is the same as the current. So apologize for that.
Clarify, looking at finished basement, which I suspect is a fairly common one, for up to $1,000 valuation, so are we really saying $55 per thousand in valuation?
Yes.
I'm mindful that a typical basement refinish could run 25 to 30,000, so we'd be looking at a substantial permit fee.
That's correct.
If I do my math correctly, that's 5.5%, right?
Yep.
Too high. It struck me by,
Well, and it's
Well,
based on,
frankly, that's the input we're looking for.
it's based on valuation, though. So where's the valuation coming from? That's not the cost to do the project.
Well, the applicant, whether it's an individual resident doing their own basement or the contractor, would have to put a value to the improvements that are going in the basement.
Okay.
and my observation on the sign fee might be that it's perhaps a bit low.
I'm sorry, which one?
I skipped a couple of pages to permanent and temporary signs.
Well, temporary signs are banners or flags, let's say, that you might see throughout the village, literally on a temporary basis. The code currently allows cumulative 50% of the time in any given year to have a temporary flag, which my personal opinion is that's too long, but it means that it's for each 15-day period, you would be charged a $15 fee.
Okay.
And do we collect that fee?
Yes.
Okay, we monitor that.
I mean, there are many times, frankly, that we have to catch people that put this stuff out there, or businesses that put it out without a permit, but yes, we collect the fees.
Okay.
If we catch the guy that throws the little rocks in the baggies on the driveways and hit him with the $750 fee per driveway, we could waive all these fees. But that's just my opinion.
So I'd ask if you review this, and if you have any questions in the next 2 weeks, please let me know. We're hopeful of having this in place and approved so that it starts with the budget year on May 1st. It doesn't have to be in place, but we'd like to do that from a financial standpoint and from a finance department tracking standpoint of fees that are coming in.
Now, one question kind of related to that is, do you anticipate that this will, I guess, do a better job of covering our costs for issuing these permits, or essentially generating more, or is this just generating more money for the village, or is it just cleaner?
It's somewhat all of those, frankly. It's almost on a case-by-case basis, but because in some cases, a permit that we're going out there 3 times on an inspection, it's not covering the cost of, the plan review, then maybe 3 inspections. It's not literally covering the cost, the staff time.
Yeah.
In other cases where it's simple and say it's a fence and we're out there looking at the post holes to make sure that they're dug to the proper depth before the posts are put in, and then we review the final fence, yes, it more than covers the cost.
Okay.
And I did want to make one additional comment, just regarding if the board does want to move forward with this, there will be a companion item then repealing the different sections where this is being pulled from, since it is being pulled from a number of different places. So if you see something where it's taking it out of everywhere, it's because it went into here and it's completely being renumbered and consolidated.
So now, based on the conversation that where there's a blank, the fees haven't changed. So for the finished basement, as trustee Bond mentioned, cost base $55 for up to $1,000 valuation. That's our current fee structure as it sits now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But how do you get that valuation?
The valuation is based on what's put on the permit by either the resident or the contractor.
So if you finish your basement, it's $500.
Contractor's estimate.
Yeah, but as I understand, okay, you know, in my mind, a homeowner's mind, they're all worried that, oh, I've redone my basement, it's gonna raise my taxes, even though, as I understand, a finished basement isn't included in your tax assessment. Unless I'm wrong.
I wouldn't argue that. Depends on what the finishing entails, if it includes a bedroom or a bathroom.
Okay, then yes, that would add value to your home. But if it's a straight finished basement, no bedroom, no bathroom, in the discussions I had with the tax assessor, he said that is not included as part of your assessed value of your home because so many people are afraid to claim it. And so you're going to have a $30,000 remodel that people are saying, it's $7,000.
I don't think that it necessarily affects your value, but I think what it does is it triggers the reevaluation of your property. That's what I think it triggers, is now that you've done an improvement, now let's look at it. So now it's no longer valued at what it was 10 years ago. They're reevaluating it today, so that's why your taxes are going up. Not because you finished your basement, just because you raised a flag, and now they're reassessing you.
Sure. And, you know,
Which
one
they
thing-
could reassess you at any point
Sure.
for any
Sure.
reason.
And one thing that I would comment on that, in the ordinance or the draft of the ordinance, not the handout, it looks like the finished basement is $55 for up to 1,000 in value, and then it's $6 for every 1,000 above that. So it's much less than what you were thinking.
That
Then
helps a lot.
Thank you, yeah, that helps a lot, because I was looking at that
Yeah,
and
I
thinking,
apologize. That's
Where'd
you
that's
see that?
correct.
So it's on page 5 of the ordinance.
Yes, it doesn't mean that I answered correctly. I apologize.
So it's not $55
It's not
for
55
every
per
thousand.
thousand.
Okay.
Actually, for the first 1,000 and then 6 for each additional.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll take a look at this. And I'd like to add this on for action at the next meeting. We certainly don't have to, but just to kind of keep things moving. And if you have any questions on specific fees, you know, as somebody that reviews ordinances around Northern Illinois, kind of in my day job, I really appreciate putting all of these in one spot. It's really almost impossible to find all of these. You know, and I think we do our best here in Montgomery to at least make people aware of other fees, big ones that might impact their development, like a Kane County Highway Impact Fee, when it comes up, because that gets missed so many times, and that can be $100,000 you weren't expecting. And so anything we can do to ensure that people are aware is a good thing. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
One
you.
more comment on the demolition category, flat fee.
Yes.
I'm thinking of a house versus a storage shed or something much simpler. What is our role in inspecting a demolition? If this is somewhat level of effort based?
that's for commercial though. That's in the commercial
It
section.
is for commercial and industrial. It's not residential. If you're looking at that $300 proposed fee,
Uh-huh.
that's strictly for commercial and industrial.
Yeah, it's under the residential as 100 per demo.
Second item down.
That's correct.
And I'm guessing that's for tearing down the house, not a shed. You don't need a permit to tear down your shed.
No.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the breakdown as well. Sorry for the last minute.
President Brawley mentioned one of the 3 items was to try to clean things up and have them all in one place so that they don't have to hunt for what a demolition permit is or, you know, what a site plan review is. So that was the main goal for both the finance department and the CD department.
Awesome. Thank you. If you have any questions, pass those along, and we'll have second reading on it at the next meeting. Moving on to item K, we have a letter of intent with Microgrid Energy for a community solar system project. I don't know if staff had anything additional to add, or if the petitioner wanted to present the item.
You know, this has come to you a couple times. The petitioner asked to have it on the separate action section. I said that we could put it there, that I could not, you know, guarantee that you would be ready to act on it, that you'd ask for more information, which he has provided some, but I did not know if it would meet your needs or not. And so with that, I'm sure he would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for forwarding this on for consideration by the village. Last week, as I mentioned earlier, the long-term renewable resource plan for the state of Illinois was approved. We're now in the process of getting an administrator in place in order to implement it. The end result is going to be somewhere around 60 of these community solar systems throughout all of ComEd. It happens to be that there is a property in Montgomery that is likely going to remain a jumbled up forest, whatever, unregulated, and there's a potential here to transform it into a community solar system for Montgomery. We as a company, Microgrid, we currently have 20 community solar systems that are being put through the ComEd interconnection application process, which is the only way, once you get through that, allows you to even be considered into this community solar program. So, and not only that, there are probably a bunch of other developers and other companies, other competition that are doing the same thing. So you have a program that's already, before it's even opened, it's overloaded with applications. What is going to make this system stand out? I believe it's going to be dedicated to the village of Montgomery. It's going to be located very in proximity to the load, which is going to better the grid. And it's also going to improve or be a beacon for other companies that see how creative and innovative Montgomery is, and it's going to bring forward business and promote jobs and businesses within the area. New technology, lower cost of electricity, that's what's going to happen with this system if we can get it through the myriad of approvals that we have to get through in order to make it viable. One of them is, how do we even start with such a piece of property that is not developable? And that's the second part of this. If this was a square piece of farmland or a green space or whatever, maybe it was a future parcel that Aurora University is not thinking about developing for the next 20 years, it would be easy. But this site isn't going to be easy. It's very difficult. And so that's the other part, this other leg to the stool, is asking for this TIF money, which I showed in a business plan. Through lower energy rates, Montgomery will be made whole of their TIF dollars within the first year, based on the lower energy rates that we would establish with the village of Montgomery and with the citizens of Montgomery in order to have all the subscribers necessary for this community solar system.
Okay.
So I'm asking, my ask is twofold. I have to have at least some sort of intent. I'm not asking for TIF dollars now because I have a long road ahead of me in order to even get to the plate, to get these incentives in place. What I am asking is, if I start down this path and I get through the myriad of all the checks and balances that I have to go through ComEd, through the IPA, through the ICC, and I have everything in place, I'm asking for some TIF funding to make this concept a reality.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. You mentioned that you're going to pay back, that the TIF monies would be repaid within a year. Do you know how much energy the village currently pays for a year? that you're basing that information off of?
I'm basing that rate on the municipal aggregate program through ComEd.
Which is for all the residents?
Yes.
So
And
that's
I
not
know-
going back to the village, that's going back to Teresa Sperling saves on her energy bill. The $43,500 doesn't get paid back out of the TIF. So it's kind of a misstatement to say the village is going to get its money back, because we're not. The residents are going to save that money, but not the village.
The village does have metered accounts with ComEd.
And you stated that we would get our payback within a year. That's my question.
Yes.
Do you know how much energy we're using a year to state that we're going to get paid back within that year?
I put on there, I do not know. What I did do is up at the top here, the 1,183,000 kilowatt hours, that's 40% of the energy from the solar energy system that we would dedicate to the town of Montgomery. You know, I don't know what your total kilowatt demand is on an annual basis, but what I'm basing the pro forma on is 40% from the community solar system going to the village of Montgomery, to your metered accounts at a 2.5 cent kilowatt hour rate.
To the village's accounts?
Yes.
Because the 60% is going to the residents then?
Yes.
Correct?
40% is dedicated to the village of Montgomery, to your metered accounts.
If you're requesting $43,500 of TIF funds, and you say that we can be paid back in less than a year, here's my issue, and this was my issue last time as well. TIF funds are very valuable, especially in that TIF area, because we're trying to create development, and we're trying to spur jobs and development and economic development and tax base. If you're requesting $43,500 and you say that we can be paid back in less than a year, why wouldn't you request, or why wouldn't you apply for the, it's not the revolving loan fund anymore, but the low interest loan through the village, and then just pay that back? If you're so confident in these numbers, why wouldn't you go that route? Because I'll say this, I have a very difficult time taking money from a TIF fund that we've essentially taken from other taxing bodies and said, we're going to use this for development. You guys don't get this. And then giving it for a solar energy project that I don't see it happening. I don't see it working.
If he took the low-interest loan, he wouldn't see this. He wouldn't be getting the savings to be able to repay the loan. I mean, you may not want to give him TIF funds, but if he took the loan.
Because he's not going to save the money on the energy we are.
Correct.
So I get that. But again, Trustee Youngerman's point is
Yes.
extremely valid, that TIF funds, the idea for TIF funds is to increase development and bring more jobs and more businesses to town.
Correct.
This does neither of those. This is not going to generate one job in Montgomery.
It will generate jobs. There's going to be jobs associated with the build of this system, which we will source locally. There's going to be jobs associated with the maintenance of the system, which is going to be sourced locally. There are going to be jobs associated with businesses will benefit from this with a lower cost of energy for a solar energy system that's dedicated to the town of Montgomery. Whenever you're talking about not only the village meters, right? 40% goes to the village at 2.5 cents. The other 60% will be allocated to the inhabitants of Montgomery at a very low rate. Now, if I go and if we cite and get approval on 20 other systems in other far reaches part of ComEd territory, it's kind of free game as to whoever goes in first and signs up gets those low rates. What I'm saying here is I understand that the village of Montgomery is going to help us get there, and in return, we are going to make this solar energy system exclusive to the inhabitants of Montgomery and to the town, 40% of it. And then 60% can go to the residents or commercial industrials or whomever wants to enroll in a source of clean energy.
Yeah, and so that's kind of my questions. And I'll preface this by saying, trying to learn more about this, the state program. I know it's really just been unveiled. The bill was passed last year. Very supportive of solar, of renewables, and that kind of thing. And I'm just, the questions that I'm going to ask today and that we're asking, really just trying to understand what this is and what we're signing a letter of intent with, because it's kind of unclear. I'll also preface this, and I think somebody mentioned it at the last meeting when I wasn't here, the TIF process, for us to approve that TIF and the ongoing process for us with the other taxing bodies and the businesses out there has been, you know, a very open process, but also one that we really had to work at. And so this is the first request that we've received from anybody that requested funds from the TIF fund, and we want to ensure that we're using it responsibly for the goals that the TIF was established on, which is redevelopment of delighted or dilapidated properties, but also bringing jobs into Montgomery. If this, and so my questions are, how? So explain to, like, you know, Joe resident that's in the audience, how they could be part of this project, and also the village, like physically, like, so we're paying, right now the village is paying 6 cents a kilowatt hour for our energy that we use, let's say at the water plant. And I guess, how would we see that savings on our ComEd bill? How does that all work?
Yes, thank you. So the way that would work is once the system is built and online and commissioned, we as Microgrid Energy are responsible for maintaining 100% or as much as we can subscription to that solar energy system. So we would log in all of your metered accounts for the town first, right? Because we're saying that we want to give you guys 40%, which is the maximum amount that one entity can subscribe to a solar energy system. So we'd log in all your metered accounts into the ComEd system. We would then tell ComEd every month that the solar energy system generated, you know, 10 electrons or 10 kWh, and 4 of it's going to Montgomery. What ComEd then does, working with Dynergy or your Aries provider, is credit your retail rate. So if you're paying Dynergy or whomever 6 cents, that gets credited to your supply bill. And then we send you a bill for the 2.5 cents. And then that delta is what is in the table here on utility bill savings.
So it's different than the aggregation in that, because on the aggregation, you just have one ComEd bill. And this would actually be, we would continue to get our ComEd bill, or a resident, let's say, or my house. I would get my ComEd bill that would have credits associated with it. But then I would owe you money. I would get a separate bill from Microgrid.
Yes, you would get a Microgrid Energy bill for the amount of solar that was produced according to your percentage of subscription to the Montgomery Solar Energy System.
Explain how that subscription works. Is that like a 25-year program that I personally would have to sign up for?
It varies. There are typically in other community solar states like Minnesota and Colorado, there are 5-year terms, 10-year terms, 15-year terms. It's in increments of 5 that usually start at 5-year. And the longer you can subscribe to, the lower the rate will be. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts to it, and it's meant to be subscriptive to however someone wants to subscribe to it.
Is there a fee for this subscription that we would have to pay up front?
There is no fee.
And that's all regulated by the state bill that passed, right?
Correct, but you know, I can't speak for other developers. If they're going to put in fees associated with folks enrolling or dropping out or whatnot, but our model that has worked in Colorado is not fee-based. On the flip side, I'm working on a community solar project in Michigan, which is typically you go and buy a panel, and then you get the energy from that panel. So there are multiple variations. What I can say is based on how we're rolling out community solar here in the state, it's going to be based on subscription duration and then a power purchase agreement or subscription agreement at 2.5 cent, at 2.7 cent, at 3 cent, whatever that would be.
And a couple things, that solar rate that you list here, that's your best estimate of what it will be? Of the rate, the final rate?
Yeah, the 2.5 cent is based on the current incentive rates that the ICC has approved as, well, not final yet, it's still in draft. The final rates, thankfully, will finally be final in about 90 days.
Okay.
So,
And so the ICC will set that rate, and that's, that rate is set for the next 25 years? Or is that update?
No. So that rate is an incentive for us as microgrid to develop this project. We are responsible for generating the solar energy from this system in order for us to get that incentive rate from the Illinois Commerce Commission. So, and it's for a 15-year period. So after 15 years of managing this community solar system, we will, there will be a community solar system that's no longer getting incentives, and but it will continue to produce energy and continue to be a community solar system.
I get you. And one last question. The bill that we'll get, that I could get at my home from microgrid, would that include like maintenance fees and charges for you to physically maintain this site? And is that capped?
That is correct. I mean, my pro forma includes O&M, equipment replacement, on and on. Everything inside the fence is our responsibility. Even the fence itself is our responsibility to maintain.
Sure, but will that end up on my bill then?
No, you're just going to get a bill for 2.5 cent of the percentage of energy that you subscribe to for your term.
I get you. And so sorry, it's like a lot of questions, but the subscription that I have, let's say I would like to do a 10-year subscription with your company to purchase this solar energy. It sounds like I have to decide an amount of energy that I'm purchasing?
Correct. It's a percentage basis. And the way the law is right now, and will continue to be, is the maximum subscription that any entity is 40%.
40% of?
Of this could, all right, we're talking about a 2 megawatt solar energy system, so 40% of that. If it's a 1 megawatt system, community solar, it could be a 100 kW solar energy system,
But
right over here.
So one question another question. So how do I know how much I should be signing up for? So, based on what I use at my house, I don't know how much I use for a year. Am I just a shot in the dark there? At first I was thinking it was what percentage of my total bill would I like to be subscription into this?
Typically, what I do is I consolidate energy bills from various clients, and then I total them up over how many years I can get from them. And then I go back to them saying, you can do 5%, or you can do 10%, or whatever percentage that is based on your historical demand load energy profile. And then, and then that's used to calculate, what percentage you would draw from the community solar system.
And so residents in Montgomery could partake in this, would be given priority in this program, in your...
Correct. I mean, I know we're talking way out in front of us, but I have it outlined in the intent that in order to get this project out of the conceptual stage, to where right now it's not developable, to get it there is going to require some assistance from the village. And by getting that assistance from you guys, and I'm not asking for it now, I'm asking for it after I jump through all the hoops, and it's 5 months from now, that in doing so, we will dedicate the energy from that system, 40%, to the village meters, and then the rest of it to the village of Montgomery, whether it's residents, commercial industrials, whomever. We have done this before in Colorado, and it works out very well. You know, we are working on 20 of these other sites in Illinois, but they're all easy developable poster stamp farmlands.
Yeah, so to clarify, because I got a little confused there, good questions, lots of them. So only if, at home, only a percentage of my bill will be solar. So I'm still going to bill from ComEd, it's going to show credits, and then I'm going to get a separate bill from you. So I'm going to pay ComEd, and I'm going to pay you.
That is correct. And in theory, you would want to net out as much as you can. Get as many credits as you can from ComEd to where your energy bill is zero, and then you get the bill from Microgrid Energy or whomever.
And who decides how much I can get from ComEd? I just want to sign up and say 100%. I want to go all solar.
You can't.
Sounds like you have to estimate yourself.
No, hold on, because I'm doing the math here in my head. If say my electric bill is $100 a month, we'll just use 100 because it's an easy number. Someone other than me, I'm assuming, decides how much the maximum I can do is 40% of my bill.
No. No, the maximum that you can subscribe from the system is 40%. A typical residential subscription, let's just make it easy. So if we're talking about 1 million kilowatt hours annually from this system here, and an average house is, 10,000 kWh. No, not even 10. 100,000 kWh on an annual basis. So you're looking at 1,000 residential subscriptions, right? Do I have my math right on that? So not one of those residents is ever going to equal 40%. But what I'm saying here, and so that's the devil in the details. There's a million models out there where my competition will come out and say, look, we want to build a solar energy system, and we're just going to dedicate it to our 3 big commercial industrial clients that we already have energy contracts for. And they're the only ones who are going to get this solar energy. On the flip side, there are developers out there who are strictly residential or low-income housing, or village allocated, where they go, all right, all the solar energy is going to go to these low-income housing or these residents. So there's different models that can be employed or deployed. And what I'm saying is, let's make this community solar system for the inhabitants of Montgomery.
But what does each resident of Montgomery that decides to partake in this? I think what we're asking is, what do we, my address, if my bill is $100 a month, what is the maximum percent I can take, and what is my savings?
Yes. So the law states for net metering, which is what we're talking about here, is 110% of your overall capacity for a given year. So if you're at 100 kW,
so say my bill's $100 a month times 12, it's $1,200 a year. So, okay, let's do math now. Tell me what the math is.
Okay, so if you're at $1,200 a year at a dollar, all right, so you owe ComEd $1,200, and we come in at half, at 50 cents. So we're going to, because you're never going to equal 40% of the solar energy system, we're going to subscribe to you the maximum amount of your load per year. So your $1,200, bill with ComEd is going to go to zero for supply, and then you're going to get a bill from us for $600.
So now let me ask a big question, because this is a big, where does Microgrid make their money? Your business.
Yes.
How do you get paid? Because this all sounds great, and it sounds like we're getting all of it. You have to be making money, so where?
So the only way that this works is because we are monetizing the federal incentive, which is the investment tax credit, which is 30% of the CapEx of the solar energy system. Our tax equity investor is getting that. We also are using accelerated depreciation of 100% on year one of the investment. And then we're also monetizing the state incentives, the SRECs and the smart inverter rebate. We are on venture capital money right now because we don't have any projects that are developed yet in Illinois, and we won't until this program gets rolled out. So, but when we make our margin, we make it on the whole portfolio. So we will develop these community solar systems sometime, I would say, 1.5 years from now, when we have the systems all commissioned. We will bring that forward to our financiers, and we will make our margins at that moment. But right now, it's all venture. It's all money at risk that we're spending on all these community solar and also behind the meter solar projects.
Okay, let me just finish.
I already asked like 1,000, so yeah.
Finish
Bring it
some
to
of
the
this,
side of the
some of
room
these things real quick. Actually, you're doing it on your tax credits from Illinois. That's your basic. I was the one that asked you about, where you got this at. And you said Denver, and I see most of these are Colorado, Maine. I see none from Illinois. Now, you mentioned you had a couple towns you're talking to, but I don't see anything from Illinois. That property you're looking at, I'll admit, was an old dump. It's got trees on it. You can't put a building on it. West Aurora even looked at it for putting their buses, but the building would sink and the blacktop wouldn't work. And so there's probably nothing you can do, okay? But instead of us investing $46,000 in it, why don't you go get your little farmland that you're talking about that wouldn't be that cost? And we got farmland, all over Montgomery. You can do that. Again, I know it's probably cheap land. That's why you're going after this. But to me, today on Channel 9, the state's attorney went after Mega Energy for the same thing you're talking. It's like, I'm not putting you with these people, but this is one of the many that they send mailings and they talk to every resident and they say, this is it. And she went after them because it's like a shell game. And especially go after the old people. And I feel like Pete and I got to watch that, I guess. Where the younger ones, like younger men, can pick it up in his head and I go, but to me, this is like a shell game. I mean, I'm not, I just don't see it, okay? You talk so many on, how much this, how much of that, and I just can't, I can't visualize a million, milliwatts, and you're gonna give so much back to me. I really don't care, but like I say, they're going after these companies because there's too many of them that are just firing something out there, and in the end, the people come up with nothing. And I can't see how we're going to get our $46,000 back. That's my point, I guess. I just don't. Yeah. That's all I have to say. I'm not for it, and I will. I'll move.
There you go.
All right.
I understand. I understand. I'm very respectful of your opinion, and this isn't going to be for everybody, but I do think that getting ahead of the curve, so to speak, and educating everybody about what this is going to result in, a new energy front here in Illinois. All these are numbers, correct? I mean, they are all numbers. But, these numbers don't have any meaning until there's a solar farm out on that undeveloped property.
Unfortunately, though, those numbers don't come until after we've spent the TIF dollars to put it in place. That's what you just said. It doesn't happen until we commit You clear the land, you put the solar field in, then we see the numbers. And there's, under item 6 here, termination. If microgrid presents a price in the agreement which is more than 5% higher than the price in the LOI, the attached proposal, on a kilowatt per hour basis, then Montgomery will have the option to terminate the LOI. Where do I get my $46,000 back? Because we've already cleared the field now. I'm done.
My hope is that that would be before.
Yeah, so that TIF fund, microgrid doesn't even have to touch it. I mean, it can go out to contract to the local people to go out and clear the area in order to get this area cleaned up. We're not going to say activate any TIF funding until we have jumped through all the hoops with the Illinois Power Authority, our agency, and with the Illinois Commerce Commission. So whenever the TIF dollars are activated, we're going to have everything in place, including approval from ComEd, from the ICC saying you have to go out and build this system. And everyone else, we're going to be under contract to deliver the system and build it. And that's when, you know, the TIF monies would be used for clearing and grubbing.
You just stated, though, that the numbers wouldn't happen until it was done.
Yes.
So if you come back and your numbers are higher, we can opt out. How do I recoup my money? Because the numbers don't come in until we're done doing it.
No.
I'm confused, because you just stated that the numbers don't come in until it's built.
No. The number here, where we're saying 2.5 cent, is based on as the incentives sit right now within the ICC and the IPA. Those numbers we are anticipating are going to go final. If those change, then our rate may change. It may go down. But we're not going to, we are going to get the incentives all squared away before we ask for your TIF money. We're going to have all of those boxes checked, including what that final incentive number is, before we ask for that TIF money to be appropriated. And then this equation goes into play.
Question for you. Justin, do you have any idea how much our ComEd bill is a year?
It depends upon whether we're talking about the streetlights or whether we're talking about energy used at the wells, water plants, et cetera. I do not have those numbers in front of me right now, but I could get those for the board.
So in my mind, you know, it seems like more appropriate request would be for us, you know, for other types of funds, for us to invest essentially in this. If we can get that information that shows how much we use as the village, right? How much we use.
Yes.
And how much we might be willing to save, might be able to save if we get into a program like this, and what the term would look like, then it might be a no-brainer for us to sign a letter of intent based on, you know, based on very limited information, that if it comes back that this is we would buy electricity for half of what we're currently paying for it, that seems to be a benefit. But in the absence of that information, you know, it would be, I think, inappropriate for us to sign a letter of intent, because we don't know how we would benefit from that. It doesn't seem appropriate to use TIF funds, you know, unfortunately, in my mind. I would like to see that site develop, but this is really doesn't meet the goals of that. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested in this. My other fear is that we end up with a solar field, and none of our residents, regardless of the technical aspect of it, and it's going to be confusing, and this isn't going to be for everybody, but let's say that this is highly regulated at the state level. If you can save half on your electric bill in 5-year contracts with a company, you might be willing to do that. And residents might partake, but one of my concerns is that nobody in Montgomery partakes in that, none of our businesses. And you have folks from all over the state, or Chicago, that want to invest in this solar thing. And then really, none of the benefit has come to Montgomery in regards to savings. And we have a solar field for 30 years on the, on a corner there, which I understand it's a dump and it needs to be picked up. But so in the absence of that information, I think I need more information on this. But like I said, I'm supportive of the idea, and I know you don't have all the answers because they're literally being drafted right now. But yeah, there's a lot more that I don't know right now.
Yeah, if I had your annual consumption from all your metered accounts, then I could accurately say that, you can easily take 40%. Therefore, this whole equation here works out, or no, you can't, So, that number there was just, me taking the total amount of energy that would come from this solar energy system and 40% of it and dedicating it to the town meters.
Of course, you said last time you were here, and like Matt just said, if these people out there don't want your electric, and at the same time, you get so many, it's whoever subscribes first, you said. And if that's the case, like he said, Chicago could say, because these people are getting 6 letters a month saying, hey, we can save you money with ComEd because there's going to be a lot of them out there. And we're getting letters like that now, or people calling. And you're saying the first ones that subscribe are going to get it.
No, the first ones who enroll.
Enroll,
so
right.
The systems that are first
nobody
into
else
the
wants to
queue.
enroll, then it goes elsewhere, correct?
No. So there's two moving parts here. One is us as microgrid getting this system into the queue to get the incentives. And that's a first come, first served proposition. We can't make this concept into a reality until we get those incentives, which is on a first come, first served basis, which means we have to go through this myriad of permitting and interconnection with ComEd and discussions with ComEd and with the landowner, all these different variables that we have to jump through in order to get the incentives to make these economics work. So now the system is built. We have an agreement with the village where you're going to get 40% of it to your meters, which is going to result in these cost savings. And then we're going to open it up to the residents of Montgomery or whatever, commercial, industrials, whomever within the city of Montgomery. But we also have to get to 100% subscription. So, what exactly this is at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, we want to make it exclusive to the village of Montgomery, but if we can't reach 100%, we are going to reach out to others, but 40% will go to the town meters and you will get your, return back.
Okay.
President Rowley, we've a number of other important items on the agenda, and we have citizens here waiting to speak. I think there are too many variables in this for us to really make a rational choice tonight, and I would suggest that perhaps this company work with our staff or bring us something more specific at another time.
We can provide you what our usage is, like you've asked for. Is there any other information, I guess, that you're looking for?
How many panels are going to be purchased, and
I had some questions about 20 minutes ago, so I'd like to get those asked.
I'm respectful, but I'm not sure how this wound up at this place on our agenda. We've got some other issues.
We do. We have a long agenda, but I've waited patiently, and I was cut off several times. So I'd like to ask my questions, and that's not directed towards you, Trustee Bond. I have a question and a comment. So my question for you, you said you have roughly 20 projects that you're working on, and they are easier in terms they are the postage stamp farmland.
Correct.
Are they being financed? Are you asking for funds from those communities for those projects?
No, we are not.
On none of them?
On none of them, because they're easy to develop. I mean, our engineers go out there and they can set their line of sight and go, okay, this is how we're going to build this thing. They can't do that over on this property.
So my comment with that, and I believe President Brawley, you said you'd like to see that land developed. I personally don't think it needs to be developed. The biologist in me just cringes at the idea of just clearing it of all the trees to come up with some clean energy. It's counterintuitive when you think about it, because at this point it is probably at one of its highest uses at this point without putting much into it at all. We're not having to clear it. So the trees are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We don't need to pay out anything to have clean energy come in. We're doing okay with the wooded lot as it is now. We don't need to develop that. So I just, again, I say this a lot when it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. I would not be in support of the TIF funds or really any type of financing to go out there and clear it and put the solar panels out there. I have family in Arizona, and they've had some of them out there, and apparently they were 5-year terms. So then they get yanked out and they're gone. So 25 years from now, we get them yanked out and they're gone, and we have a bunch of rough land left there. Then what do we do? So I don't think that particular parcel is the right place for this, because I don't think it needs to be developed. Thank you for indulging me.
We could consider taking a sense of the board as to whether we want to continue this discussion or not.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need more information, then indicate that. But if you would be supportive of this, or at least want to continue the discussion. Teresa?
Again, I don't think that site needs to be developed. I would love to see the clean energy put into a different location if you found something that worked for you.
No.
I concur with Trustee Spurling that not on this site. I'd be interested in, I like the solar alternative, I like the idea, but why we're picking a square peg into a round hole, I don't understand. If you have 20 other locations that you're not spending, why do we need to spend? There's plenty of open lands in this community that wouldn't require the spend.
I agree with Trustee Spurling as well.
Okay.
Then it was worth it for me to push to talk.
All right, well, I really do appreciate your time at this point, and I'll give Trustee Youngerman a moment to...
Sense of the board. What?
We took a straw poll on whether or not to continue. More information or not interested?
Not interested.
All right. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to, so we're not going to vote on that, then. We don't need to. So with that, we'll move on to item L, which is ordinance 1812, amending the village code regarding alcoholic beverage closing hours. This is first reading. Chief Myers, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I don't. I will ask Attorney Julian if she has any comments.
No, I think that the intention of this was just to reflect what the board had requested the changes be, so I would welcome any feedback or any changes to the verbiage, but otherwise I think that the intention was just to memorialize what had been discussed at the last meeting.
Can you just summarize what those two changes are?
Absolutely. In your packet, you see ordinance 1812. The one in the second section that is in red, it shall be unlawful to sell or offer for sale at retail for off-premises consumption any alcohol liquor in the village between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. So the major change is the next sentence. It shall be unlawful to sell or offer for sale at retail any alcohol liquor in the village between the hours of 1 a.m. and 12 noon on Sunday. So the 1 a.m. is the one major change on Friday and Saturday night. And then, of course, the other discussion with the 9 a.m. on Sunday for all licenses.
So to clarify, I think It was just to provide that the retail sales for consumption off-premise would stop at 1 a.m. rather than 2 a.m., but, you know, it wouldn't affect the bars or anything. It would just be the carry-out liquor sales. And then it would be a universal change to start selling at 9 a.m. on Sundays instead of just the holidays that we had specified last time.
So with the 2 AM that's in here is in regards to,
The restaurant bar licenses
Okay.
that currently would be, we didn't change anything with allowing how late a restaurant or bar. It would be the packaged carry-out
Okay.
sales.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to approve?
That's first reading.
Is it okay for consent?
Consent? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right, moving on, we have items for discussion this evening. We have item A, which is the Gas and Wash revised site plan. This was tabled from the village board meeting of March 26th. And so I look forward to a discussion at this. I'll ask if staff has anything additional to add, and then invite the petitioner up to address the board.
I don't think we have anything to add at this time. You have before you a revised site plan. As you indicated, the item was tabled. This revised site plan reflects a change in the layout, obviously, to make it more linear east to west along Route 30, and have unused area or unplanned area, I should say, at this time, which is about 190 feet wide from the rear or the southern line of the proposed development to the right-of-way, which is Adams Drive. And I know the applicants are here tonight.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are a number of residents as well, so.
Okay, thank you. If the applicant would like to come. And one clarification I did make at the start of the meeting, I'll just make again that the concept plan that showed the apartments is not being considered, has been removed from the concept and is not part of this petition. So it's not something that we're anticipating.
And I just want to clarify, because we had a conversation earlier, President Browley, that this indicates that there's a fence of neutral color at the back of the property, and I thought we had talked that it was a concrete type wall.
And you
It is a
can,
wall.
they might be able to address that, but yeah.
Okay.
They refer to it as a fence, but it is what you would consider a wall.
Okay, so to the layperson, it's like a sound wall almost, like we would see along the corridors?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I was here a couple weeks back with Len McHenry, who is the owner of Lenny's Gas and Wash that is proposed for this site on Gordon and Route 30. My name is Lyman Teeman. I'm an attorney, and Scott Pritchett is here. Scott is our architect land planner. I think what you have before you this evening is something that kind of evolved after we left the last meeting here back on March 12th. When we left the village board, we, disappointed it perhaps in believing that, our project, which we admire, was receiving less admiration from some of the neighbors to the south. So we took a hard look at this plan, and we tried to look at it in the sense that what can we do to help the neighborhood to the south where the residential properties are. And with the cooperation of your staff and with the cooperation of the landowner with whom we're under contract, we were able to move the project a little bit further north and spread it more east and west to keep it away from the residential properties to the south, of approximately 190, 200 feet from those properties to the south. I'll have our land planner and architect go through some of the details of the changes, but essentially what we're doing is taking the convenience store with the drive-up food service window, which is part of our special use request, the gasoline station with the gas pumps to the north of the gasoline station, and then commercial fueling. We've moved from the south of the station to immediately east of the station, between the station and the car wash. And another thing to point out, I think, is that in the original plan, the car wash was positioned north and south. In this plan, the car wash is positioned east and west. So there is more separation from the car wash to the properties to the south. There's definitely more separation from the truck fueling, the commercial diesel area, and the properties, to the residential properties to the south. We've looked at berming and landscaping and fencing and things of that nature to help make this more compatible with the environment. And we believe we've come up with something. We've eliminated direct access to Adam Street down below. We're trying to direct traffic through the site so it's the least intrusive to anything to the south. And essentially, if you look at what we have here now, and again with the cooperation of the landowner, there's about a 2.5 acre, 2.67 acre parcel that separates our use from Adam Street. And we believe that, you and your wisdom will look at the development of that parcel carefully in the future, and whatever would be approved for that parcel would be a good additional buffer area between us and the residential properties to the south. With that, I'd like to have Scott Pritchett address you and go into detail on some of the changes that we've made. And we're both here available, and the owner of the property, Mr. McHenry, is here also to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Scott Pritchett. I'm an architect for ARSA and Associates, working for Mr. McHenry and Gas and Wash for the project. I want to thank you for the opportunity tonight, and keep in mind that it's already a late evening, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible. After working with village staff and the commission and listening to the residents, as it was pointed out, we have in response provided a new site plan. The access points to the site plan have been revised. We have the right in, right out off of 30, as well as the driveway to the east, to the west. We no longer have access points onto the south, onto Adam Avenue at this point. The truck fueling, diesel fueling, we still have separated. That is still a priority of ours. We want to make sure the diesel fueling is separated from the gasoline fueling. We have moved it to between the buildings and in front of the buildings. So at this point, all the fueling is in front of the buildings, but it's still separated as per our requirement, just to keep trucks and cars from being in the same fueling area. Keep in mind that Gas and Wash, as with any gasoline station, is not a destination business. We basically want to capture the business that's on the road currently already. And it's a fairly small amount of that percentage of that traffic that's out there. Of that small percentage of the traffic that comes on the site, overwhelming majority of that traffic will be cars. A small percentage will be trucks of one type or another. Of that small percentage of the trucks, an even smaller percentage will be over-the-road trucks, the type of semis that people think of. Those trucks are either buying fuel out of state before they get into Illinois, or they're buying through fleet service programs at other stations. Usually small trucking companies will have certain stations that they buy fuel from. Won't be us. What we provide is diesel fueling for local truck traffic, for the local landscape people, local contractors, people who rent from Enterprise and need to fuel up those trucks that they rent with diesel. As pointed out, Lot 2, which is the lot to the south of us now, the owners of the property have Lot 2. That is 190 feet from the north to the south. It's 2.67 acres is for the future development, which whatever that might be. From the retail building to the south, to that property line, our south property line is 65 feet. It's 255 feet from our retail building to the property line at the southern edge of Lot 2, which is at Adam Avenue. It's 320 feet to the property line to the south, and approximately 350 feet to the residences to the south. The diesel fueling area is actually 125 feet from our south property line, and thus 315 feet to the south property line of Lot 2, 380 feet to the north property line of the properties to the south of us, and 410 feet to the houses to the south of us. We've taken great efforts here to buffer ourselves and move ourselves as far north as possible. We will be providing an 8-foot-high solid fence. That's along the entire south property line on that whole edge there, along that entire drive. We've been purchasing recently from a company called Semtech. It's a pre-manufactured fence. It looks like stone, but it's not a masonry product. But it is actually a solid fence, and it's meant to help with sound transmission reduction. So it actually helps reduce sound quality from our property to the south. And with 8 feet high and solid fence, we'll not only be blocking the visual and potential lights, but also the sound. I want you to keep in mind that as with all of our projects and most gasoline station projects, if we are allowed to proceed, we'd be seeking a lot of other approvals. There's a lot of things that come out during discussions like this from residents who have great concerns. So I want to summarize a few of the approvals that we have to go through to get a project like this constructed. From Montgomery, we'd be looking for approvals for the appearance of the overall site and buildings, including the design, materials, and finishes. Zoning requirements for performance standards. One of those primary things would be in performance standards would be sound. All of our vacuum equipment is located inside of our car wash building. The only located outside of the building are the actual hoses themselves. So the vacuums are inside the building. Zoning requirements for signage, for landscaping, we'd obviously conform with all the village's requirements. Building code requirements, fire code requirements, stormwater, water service, sewer requirements. All these things will be reviewed by the different entities that will be reviewing them, getting us approved by them. We'll have to conform with everything they needed. State of Illinois for accessibility codes, energy conservation codes, state health department codes, which is actually the plumbing code. State fire marshal for the fueling system, including the double-walled underground fueling system tanks. There's always great concern about fuel leakage. That really doesn't exist anymore with double-walled tanks that are censored. If there is a leak, it's censored, the system's shut down, state's notified, repairs are made, and until it's documented, it's not allowed to operate again. We're going to the State Environmental Protection Agency regarding wastewater coming out of primarily our car wash. Going to Kane County for stormwater quality and stormwater detention issues. Also Kane County's Health Department for the retail store, for the food service facility. Also be going to Illinois Department of Transportation for the access driveway, as well as any improvements they may want for us for that development. So you can see that we're going to be going through a lot of potential review processes. Yes?
Isn't this in Kendall County?
Oh, is it Kendall? My mistake.
30 is the dividing line. I'm making sure that I'm not wrong. It is Kendall County.
I lived in West Aurora for 9 years, just north of here.
I apologize.
But there's a lot of approvals that we have to go through. So in addition to tonight, where we're looking for help with the zoning portion of this, when we move on, there's lots of other things that we have to make sure that we take care of. And all of those things are meant to protect the citizens from any potential issues with things that usually are concerned with. I want to thank you for your time. I am here, as well as the owner, the civil engineer. We're all here to answer any questions you may have.
Awesome, thank you. One concern, because sound was a big concern from the residents, and it's a concern for me. And I noticed that the car wash exits to the west.
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, next to parcel 34 is the backyard of residentials. Would it be potential to extend that wall around the corner? Because I discovered that a lot of the noise isn't necessarily the vacuum system, it's the blowers that are drying off your car. Which, by the way, I love the mirrors in the drive-through. That your car looks fabulous. I went through yesterday, so down in Plainfield. So I did like that, the mirrors next to it. But the noise from those blowers is a concern for me because it's coming out at the west end, right where the backyards of those properties are. They're just a little, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away.
Yeah, the blowers are obviously all inside the building, and they're maintained inside the building, and there is a door at that end that's kept closed, but it does open up as you're coming out to allow you out of it. But we're open to suggestions. And
I'm just thinking about the wall coming
Yeah.
around to help buffer that noise.
Sure, I'm
from
sure that we'd be more than willing to look into that, yeah.
Okay.
Coming out the east side, right? It's coming out the east side.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say the west side, I meant the east side, I apologize.
East side, yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
I apologize.
That's okay, he got the county correct.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We're touche.
There were concerns expressed about vapor and odor, and I wondered if you could address those concerns for us.
Vapor and odor? Well, I mean, the car washes shouldn't be generating any odors.
I think these were fuel-related concerns.
Fuel-related?
Yeah.
Well, as with any fuel system, it has to go through the State Fire Marshal for approval. There's a venting system that occurs for the underground tanks. All that entire process is reviewed, so when the tank system is drawn up and submitted to the State Fire Marshal for review, they'll review all those issues in regards to the venting and where it occurs and how close it is to property lines, houses, and so forth. But honestly, the system itself is fully self-contained. And it's like any other gas station you go to, you don't normally notice anything like that. The fumes, there are minimal fumes, and you would never notice most anything that happens.
And vehicles are to shut their engines off when they're fueling, so we're not really talking about exhaust.
Yeah, that is a state law, right. They have to shut their engines off while they're fueling.
Okay, I thought it was important to address those concerns.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we don't encourage any idling trucks or cars. Yeah, there's no reason to come and get your fuel and go ahead and be on your way. And the truck fueling is just like the automobile fueling. They may pull in, they may get their gas, they may run inside to get a coffee and a donut and come back out. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to move right away, you know. So just like you at the gas pump, it's almost used as a parking space occasionally.
Are you looking to have gaming?
Video
gaming?
I'm not sure the owner can pursue that through the state. That could be something that he could pursue, but that would come through the state, and it would depend upon the state whether they would allow it or not. You know, if it was even qualified. And
again,
I'm sorry, does the village, I'm not even aware if the village has an ordinance about
No,
gaming?
it does come from the state, typically when they apply for a liquor license.
Yeah, I know the villages can have ordinances regarding it.
And I went down to, like I said, I went down to Plainfield yesterday just to kind of take a look, and I commend you. It's the inside and everything, all the finishes. I happened to use the washroom while I was there. It's a nice facility. It's well done. It's well put together. And I noticed that there was no gaming in there. So that was encouraging to me, because gaming is kind of a hot button topic around here, even though it's not our battle to fight, but we like to try to keep some control over it if we can. So again, the facility that I went down and saw in Plainfield, and I saw some photos of the Shorewood one. I like the facade and the coloring of the Shorewood location much better, being that it's so close to the residential neighborhoods. But again, just everything inside the finishes and all the way down to the walk-in cooler were really nicely done.
Well, thank you. The owner is here, but he does make great efforts at doing quality projects and also trying to distinguish each project a little bit differently from